The walls of the consultation room felt too bright, too fake. Painted with cartoon animals and oversized smiles, they tried to mask the truth that clung to every corner like invisible dust. A dolphin grinned over the IV stand. A panda winked near the monitor that beeped like it had a heart of its own. But none of it helped. It didn't matter how colorful the whales were on the wallpaper. Nothing in that room could soften the blow of what was coming. Jordan Wells sat stiffly in the hard plastic chair, clutching her 5-year-old son against her chest. Isaiah had fallen asleep in her arms, his breath slow and shallow, his tiny fingers curled around the frayed edge of a seafoam green blanket. It used to be vibrant. Now it was faded, washed thin by too many hospital laundries and sleepless nights. His bald head rested just below her collarbone, where she could feel every rise and fall of his breath, feel the quiet war waging inside his body. Across from her sat Dr. Lena Cho, a pediatric oncologist with eyes that knew too much. Her glasses caught the sterile overhead light, hiding the heaviness behind them for just a second before she spoke. Her desk, once pristine, was now scattered with charts, printouts, PET scans, and MRI reports. The edges of one scan were slightly curled, as though someone had gripped it too tightly. Probably Jordan. "Jordan," Dr. Cho said gently, but there was an unmistakable gravity to her tone. It wrapped around Jordan like a cold wind. "I know we've been hoping for improvement, but Isaiah's latest results, they confirm our most serious concern." Jordan didn't blink, didn't breathe. Her grip around her son tightened ever so slightly. She had read the body language before the words ever landed. She already knew, but somehow hearing it made it feel new again, like falling through the same trap door every time and still being surprised by the landing. "It's stage 4 neuroblastoma," Dr. Cho continued, her voice steady, even as she carefully picked up one of the scan images and held it to the light. "It's spread beyond the adrenal gland. There's involvement in the left kidney and signs near the spine." Jordan leaned forward, squinting at the image. But it was all just shadows and ghosts to her. She didn't understand the shapes, the smudges, the small, faint circle Dr. Cho tapped with her index finger. What mattered wasn't on the image. It was in her arms. "What does this mean?" Her voice cracked. "How long do we have?" Dr. Cho set the scan down carefully. "With aggressive intervention, surgery to remove the tumor, followed by immunotherapy and radiation, Isaiah could respond well. But without those, we might be looking at 6 months, a year, at most." The room tilted. Time warped. Jordan's lungs forgot how to inhale. 6 months? A year? That's not how mothers measure time. Time was supposed to be measured in birthdays, kindergarten enrollment, Saturday pancakes, superhero Halloween costumes, bedtime stories repeated until she knew them by heart. Not in months. Not like this. Her lips brushed the top of Isaiah's head as a quiet breath rattled from his nose. He stirred, murmured something she couldn't understand, then stilled again. Asleep, peaceful, blissfully unaware. "There's still hope," Dr. Cho added, her voice quickening as though trying to reach Jordan before she slipped completely into the void. "Children his age sometimes respond better than expected to newer treatment plans. We're seeing promise in advanced immunotherapy trials. There's a path forward, but we need to act quickly." Jordan nodded slowly. "Then let's do it," she said. "Whatever it takes. When can we start?" A flicker crossed Dr. Cho's expression. It wasn't hesitation. It was something else. Worry. She folded her hands over the file. "Jordan, we've talked about this before. I know you love him. I've seen you here every week, never missing an appointment. But I have to ask, what's still holding you back from starting treatment? Is it still insurance?" The word hit Jordan like a slap. It cracked something open she'd been holding tight for weeks. Her shoulders slumped. Her strength, the armor she wore around every nurse and billing clerk in late-night ride home, finally slipped. "Yes," she whispered. "My plan doesn't cover the surgery or the immunotherapy, just basic chemo and some labs. Everything else is out of pocket." Her throat tightened. "And I can't afford it." Dr. Cho nodded. Not coldly, not with pity, just understanding, like a battle-worn general recognizing the same scars on a different soldier. "We'll keep him on the chemo that's covered, she said gently. And I'll speak with the hospital's Assistance Foundation again. Maybe we can get emergency support for part of the next phase. Thank you, Jordan said, but the words felt hollow. Even oxygen seemed heavy in her chest, like everything inside her was sinking. She rose, still holding Isaiah. Her legs moved like anchors, each step toward the hallway more difficult than the last. The colorful decals on the walls blurred into meaningless smears of paint, the friendly faces of smiling monkeys and pirate bears, mocking. None of them knew what it was to hold your child like he was made of glass. Outside, the afternoon light was too harsh, casting long shadows across the sidewalk. Jordan walked toward her aging minivan, its red paint sun-worn, and the left mirror held on with zip ties. Every scratch and dent told a story of something she'd sacrificed. Somewhere she'd chosen Isaiah over herself. She buckled him in with care. The seat belt clicked over the small curve of his belly. The buckle squeaked. Her hands shook. He was still asleep. She slid into the driver's seat and stared ahead, hands on the wheel. Whatever it takes, she repeated. Somehow, some way, she would find it. Because there was no other choice. Not for fame, not for applause, but to save her son. Quick pause. If you're still watching, that means something's clicking. Hit like, drop your take below, or send this to someone who needs to hear it. The old Dodge Caravan wheezed to a stop near the corner of Southwood and Elston, just a few blocks from the park. The paint was chipped along the doors, and the back bumper bore the faint imprint of a long-forgotten fender bender. It wasn't much, but it got Jordan there. That mattered more than anything. She sat for a moment, hands still gripping the wheel, watching the world pass through the windshield like she wasn't part of it. Cars, strollers, joggers with earbuds, people living lives untouched by PET scans or oncology waiting lists. In the back seat, Isaiah was still asleep, his head tilted gently to the side, thumb tucked under his chin. That green blanket, the one that had traveled through every emergency room and chemo chair with him, was clutched tightly in his hands like it was the last soft thing in his world. Jordan turned off the engine. The silence that followed wasn't peace, it was pressure. There was no paycheck coming, no safety net, just her voice, her story, and a cardboard sign. She stepped out of the van and opened the trunk carefully. Inside was her gear, if you could call it that, a battery-powered speaker, taped at the seams and patched with hope, a mic with a frayed cable that had been held together with sheer will, and the sign, folded into thirds and worn at the edges. In thick black marker it read, "Sing to save my son." She paused, straightened it out, and added it to the front of the setup. The words looked bolder in the afternoon light, even if the corners were curled from too many uses. Her stage was simple, a square of cracked sidewalk beneath an old elm tree near the park entrance. It wasn't glamorous, not even close, just a pocket of space between a graffiti-tagged utility box and a rusted bike rack. But this little corner had become hers over the past few months. Her makeshift stage, her confession booth, her protest sign. Some days people ignored her, some even scoffed, tossed side eyes that cut sharper than words. A few accused her of faking it, of using her child for pity. She never answered back. Her voice wasn't for fighting, it was for fighting through. But there were other days. Days when someone dropped a 20 without saying a word. Days when someone came back, said they remembered her from last week, said they prayed for her son. Once a barista from the shop across the street brought her a warm tea with honey, said her voice reminded him of his grandma. Those days kept her coming back. Jordan set up the mic stand, twisted the cable until the connection caught, then clicked on the speaker. The red light blinked, still working, for now. She picked her song carefully. It couldn't just be anything. It had to mean something. Her voice wasn't polished. It cracked when she was tired, trembled when she thought too much about the lyrics. But it was real. Lean on Me had become her anthem, not just because of the melody, but because it asked something simple, that we carry one another, that we don't let people fall alone. She took a breath and stepped up to the mic. The first notes came out quiet, barely there, but they grew, stretching into the summer air, like a thread connecting her to the people walking by. Some slowed. A woman pushing a stroller paused near the curb. A delivery driver on a bike leaned against a nearby pole. A teenager walking a golden retriever stopped, listening with his head tilted. Jordan didn't stop to thank them, not yet. She had learned that breaking the song's flow made people disconnect. But she saw them, locked their faces into memory, carried each moment like a stone in her pocket. As she reached the chorus, a man in a gray hoodie dropped a few bills into the donation box she'd placed beside the speaker. Then a woman added coins. Then another person came by and slipped in a 10, eyes meeting hers for a fleeting second before moving on. Still singing, Jordan nodded faintly, her hand resting lightly over her chest. When the song ended, there was a moment of stillness. Then came the soft applause, sparse but real. She smiled barely, just enough. Her voice was wearing down already, so she crouched beside the box, quickly counted the money, $27 and a few nickels. Not much, not enough, but it was something. She took a sip of water, let it settle in her throat, then looked up at the sky. The sun had started to lean westward. Still time for one more song. She wasn't done, not even close. She adjusted the mic again. This time she'd sing "His Eye is on the Sparrow." Gospel, strong, true. Something that reminded her why she still showed up, even when her legs trembled and her hands hurt and her soul felt like it had been wrung out. As she sang, she didn't notice the black SUV pulling up slowly across the street. Didn't see the man in the driver's seat lean forward, watching. All she felt was the music. All she saw was Isaiah, still sleeping behind the tinted glass of the van. She sang for him. She sang because there was no other way forward. She sang because sometimes a mother's voice is the only thing left to fight with. And that voice, it was just beginning to be heard. The final note drifted into the breeze, soft as breath. For a moment, the street fell into stillness, as if the air itself was holding space for her. A few scattered claps, a quiet nod from a man passing by, a whispered thank you from a teenager with headphones around his neck, and then silence again. Jordan stepped back from the mic, heart racing but voice steady. She took a breath, wiped the sweat from her brow, and checked on Isaiah through the van window, still asleep. His little chest rising and falling like a tide she prayed would never stop. She turned to adjust the mic stand, not noticing the sleek black SUV that had eased to a stop across the street. The sun caught the curve of its hood, reflecting off the polished chrome. Its tinted windows revealed nothing, but behind the glass someone was watching. Inside the vehicle sat Elias Reed. He hadn't meant to be there. He'd asked his driver to drop him near the park just for a walk, to clear his head after a long day of meetings and boardrooms filled with people who talked too much and said too little. But then he heard her voice, raw, cracked, unignorable. He followed it the way someone follows a siren call they don't understand. Now he watched her, the way she checked on her son between songs, the way she stood, tired but unshakable. There was no performance in her body, no practiced charm, only purpose. It pulled at something deep inside him, something old, something heavy. Without a word, Elias opened the door and stepped out. He didn't move quickly, just closed the door with a quiet click and walked across the street. His steps were calm, deliberate, like he didn't want to startle anyone. He wasn't the kind of man people ignored, even dressed down, khakis, navy jacket, no tie. He moved like someone used to being listened to. Jordan didn't see him at first. She was busy resetting the mic stand, fiddling with the old cable. But when she finally looked up and saw him standing a few feet away, her body tensed. She straightened instinctively, her guard snapping into place. "If you're here to tell me I can't sing here," she said flatly, "I've got a permit. From the city, it's legal." "I'm not here for that," Elias said, voice low but clear. He glanced toward the van. "Is that your son?" Jordan's jaw tightened. "Yes. Isaiah. He's 5. He looks like he's been through a lot." She didn't respond at first. The man in front of her didn't look like someone who stumbled onto this corner by accident. His shoes were expensive. His watch subtle but unmistakably high-end. But there was something else too. Something in his eyes. No condescension, just attention. "He's in treatment," she said finally. "Stage 4 neuroblastoma." Elias nodded slowly. "I'm sorry. I know those words carry more weight than they should." She studied him, still guarded. "Why are you here?" I watched you sing, he said. I saw the way people listened, the way you kept going. That takes more than talent. That takes something deeper. Jordan looked down, unsure what to say. Compliments didn't pay for radiation. I don't really have a choice, she said quietly. It's him or nothing. Elias took one small step closer, still keeping distance. What would you say, he asked, if I told you I wanted to help? She blinked, caught off guard. Help how? I don't mean dropping a few dollars in a box. I mean real help, treatment, bills, whatever it takes to get your son what he needs. Jordan stared at him, her mind scrambling for answers. You don't even know us. No, he said softly. But I know what it feels like to watch someone you love suffer. I know what it means to feel powerless, and I know what it looks like when someone refuses to give up. She didn't answer, didn't trust it yet. She had heard words like that before, but this felt different. There was no pitch, no condition. I'm not asking you to believe me today, Elias said. Just let me learn more. And if you're willing, let me help. Jordan's throat tightened. Something behind her ribs cracked open, a sliver of something she hadn't let in for a long time. What's your name? She asked. Elias. She looked at him a moment longer. Well, Elias, she said, voice quiet but steady, if you really want to help, start by believing me. I already do, he replied with a calmness that cut through the noise. More than you know. The warmth of Elias's words still lingered in the air when it shifted, subtle at first, like a gust of cold wind pushing against a door not fully closed. Jordan turned her head instinctively, her posture sharpening, as a new voice pierced the soft murmur of the street. This is ridiculous, the woman snapped. She was in her early 50s, maybe older. Crisp white blouse, designer bag tucked high on her shoulder, sunglasses pushed back into perfectly sprayed hair. Her heels clicked with controlled outrage as she marched toward the corner like she owned it. Are we really just letting this happen? She said loudly, her voice slicing through the calm. Some woman using a sick child as a prop to hustle people on a public sidewalk? Jordan didn't move. Her hands stayed at her sides, but her fingers curled around the base of the mic stand to steady herself. She didn't need to look around. She could feel it. Eyes turning, heads angling, judgment sharpening. The woman stepped closer, one arm gesturing toward the van. Where's the proof? He looks fine to me. Bald doesn't mean cancer. Plenty of kids shave their heads for TikTok these days. Jordan swallowed hard. Her mouth opened, then closed again. No sound came out. Her voice, so steady in song, was gone. Not from shame, from exhaustion, from hearing accusations like this again and again, each one carving away a little more of her strength. And now some guy in a suit shows up, the woman continued, now addressing no one and everyone. Like some savior from a Hallmark movie? Please. Her laugh was sharp and mean, bouncing off the sidewalk like shattered glass. Elias stepped forward. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't square his shoulders. He didn't have to. The shift in his presence was enough. Calm, steady, but unmistakable. Like the quiet before a storm. Ma'am, he said, I suggest you take a step back. The woman froze, caught off guard by the directness in his tone. Excuse me, she said. You heard me, Elias said. His voice didn't waver. You've made assumptions about a woman you don't know, about a child you've never met, and the cruelty in your tone says more about you than anything else happening here. She scoffed. I have a right to my opinion. You do, Elias replied, but you don't have the right to shame someone who's doing everything she can to save her child's life. You don't get to weaponize your ignorance and call it truth. There was a beat of silence. The woman's jaw tightened. She opened her mouth, ready for a comeback, but nothing came out. Not because she ran out of venom, because something in Elias's eyes made her pause. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't even angry. He was just sure. She turned sharply, heels biting into the sidewalk, and stormed off without another word. The moment hung heavy in the air, then a small wave of quiet murmurs. A woman holding a paper coffee cup placed a folded bill into the donation box without saying anything. A jogger clapped once, quietly, then kept running. Jordan stayed frozen for a second longer. She let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Elias turned to her, his features softer now. "I'm sorry you had to go through that," he said. Jordan's voice returned in a whisper. "It happens more than you think." He nodded. "Let them judge. They're not the ones holding a child through chemo. They're not the ones singing because it's the only thing left. You're stronger than they'll ever be." And somehow in that moment, she believed him. For the first time in weeks, she felt seen. Jordan didn't speak right away. The adrenaline from the confrontation still buzzed in her fingertips, but something had shifted inside her. It wasn't just that Elias had stepped in. It was the way he did it. No theatrics. No grandstanding. Just quiet conviction. She looked toward the van. Isaiah was still asleep, his head pressed against the car seat, the green blanket now draped over his chest like armor. The sunlight filtering through the windshield cast soft patterns across his face. He looked so peaceful, too peaceful for a child fighting a war in his own body. Elias followed her gaze. "May I meet him?" he asked. Jordan hesitated. Part of her wanted to say no. She had spent months shielding Isaiah from strangers, from questions, from pity. But this man hadn't given her pity. He gave her something else, something she couldn't quite name yet, but it felt like trust. She nodded slowly. "Just be quiet. He's still resting." Together they crossed the narrow stretch of grass to the van. Jordan opened the side door gently. The hinges squeaked and she flinched, but Isaiah didn't stir. He lay curled on his side, one hand beneath his chin, the other still gripping the edge of the blanket like a lifeline. Elias stood in silence. He didn't say a word. He didn't ask questions. He just looked. And when he finally spoke, his voice was barely louder than a whisper. "Let's make sure he gets everything he needs." Jordan turned to him, her eyes searching for a catch, a condition, a hidden agenda. But all she saw was calm, stillness, like he'd already made the decision, and now all that remained was the follow-through. She nodded again. No resistance this time. "Okay," she said. "Let's try." Elias didn't press for more. He didn't ask for paperwork or proof or a backstory. He just stepped back as she gently closed the van door, careful not to wake Isaiah. The sun had dipped lower now, casting long shadows across the sidewalk, stretching everything into slow motion. The buzz of the city had returned. The soft hum of traffic, someone laughing a block away, a distant siren. But within their little pocket of the world, it felt quiet, not empty, just quiet. Elias pulled out his phone, typing something quickly, then looked up at her. "We'll start small. No pressure. Just let me line up some logistics." Jordan didn't ask what that meant. She didn't need to. Something inside her was different now. A knot, long coiled tight around her chest, had loosened just a little. This wasn't a miracle. Not yet. But it was the first real step forward. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like she was walking it alone. The next morning, the city was still half asleep. Pale sunlight crept across rooftops and blurred through thin morning fog. Jordan pulled the old minivan into her usual spot near the park, the engine rattling like it was holding its breath. The streets were quiet, just a few early joggers, a delivery truck groaning into a parking space, someone walking a dog with a coffee in hand. Isaiah was still asleep in the back seat, curled against his blanket, his lashes twitching slightly as he dreamed. Jordan reached back and brushed a thumb across his cheek. His skin was pale but peaceful. He looked calm. She got out, stretched the stiffness from her shoulders, and began unpacking her gear. Same old speaker, same mic stand, same weathered cardboard sign. But this time, there was something new. A second sheet of paper, taped just below the first, handwritten in blue marker. "Thank you for yesterday. Every dollar counts. Isaiah is fighting." As she began setting up, a familiar voice called out behind her. "Morning." Jordan turned and saw Elias striding toward her, flanked by two people she didn't recognize. One carried a hard black case, the other had a tablet and a Bluetooth headset, and the brisk, no-nonsense walk of someone always in the middle of something. Elias wore a windbreaker this time. Dark jeans, casual shoes. Still clean, still sharp, but less polished, less distant. Jordan raised an eyebrow. "Bringing a whole entourage today?" He smiled. "Friends and helpers." The woman with the tablet stepped forward. "I'm Jessa. I help run digital campaigns. Hope you don't mind, but we've got an idea we'd love to try, if you're open to it. Jordan looked at her warily. What kind of idea? Jessa turned the tablet around. On the screen was a basic live stream interface, camera feed, live chat window, and in the corner, a donation tracker already set to 0. We're setting up a high-quality live stream, Jessa explained. Simple, secure, and linked directly to a medical trust in Isaiah's name. You sing, tell your story if you're comfortable, and people watching can donate in real time. Transparent, secure, every dollar tracked. Jordan blinked. And you think people will watch? I do, Elias said. Yesterday they heard you. Today we give more people the chance to listen. She looked at the van, then back at them. What if it doesn't work? Then I still cover what Isaiah needs, Elias said. But this could be something bigger than both of us. Something shifted in her chest. Fear, yes, but also momentum and possibility. She nodded. All right, let's try. The crew got to work fast. In under 30 minutes, they'd set up a small platform on the grass, borrowed from a local event company, 2 lightweight speakers, a compact mixer box wired discreetly behind the mic, a high-end camera on a tripod a few feet away. Jessa stood by the tablet, already talking to someone on a call, syncing systems. An assistant handed Jordan a new mic, a headset model, sleek and light. She held it like it was a foreign object. You'll sound amazing, Elias said beside her. You ready? She nodded, stomach tight with nerves. As I'll ever be. Jessa gave a thumbs up. The red light on the camera blinked to life. The donation counter on the screen reset to 0. Jordan stepped forward. She scanned the park. A few curious people had gathered. Some she recognized, some new. The rest, somewhere behind the lens, watching, listening. She took a breath and began to sing. It wasn't perfect. Her voice cracked once. Her hand trembled when she reached for the high note. But it was real. Every word, every note, every ounce of herself poured into the performance like a lifeline. And people responded. The live chat filled with comments. Beautiful. Donating now. Stay strong, Mama. We see you. The donation counter ticked upward. $50, $100, $200. Between songs, she spoke. Just a little at first. My name's Jordan. This is for my son Isaiah. He's 5. He has cancer. And I'm just doing what I can. The second song brought more viewers. The third brought more tears. By the fourth, the counter crossed 4 digits. People started showing up in person. A man pulled over his car and watched from the driver's seat. A mother sat on a bench with her daughter and wiped at her eyes. A runner paused her workout and pressed her hands together like she was praying. Elias stood nearby, silent, steady, arms crossed. He didn't interfere. He didn't need to. The power wasn't in his presence. It was in knowing when to step back and let someone else's voice lead. By the time Jordan reached her 5th song, the air had changed. There was an energy in the space now, a hum, like something bigger had arrived. Jessa walked over, eyes wide. We just passed $5,000? Jordan froze. What? In under an hour, Jessa said breathlessly, and we're still climbing. Jordan stared at her. Her voice, so steady a moment ago, caught in her throat. 5,000. That number had always belonged to another life. One where she worked 3 night shifts just to make rent. One where she skipped meals to buy Isaiah's meds. 5,000 was unreachable. But now, it was real. Elias stepped forward quietly. And we're just getting started. Jordan didn't say anything right away. She didn't need to. Her eyes said it all. She looked back toward the van, toward her sleeping son. And for the first time, she felt it fully. This was no longer a sidewalk. This was a stage, a movement. And it had just begun. The sun had dipped below the rooftops by the time Jordan turned the corner onto her street. The minivan gave its usual creaky protest as she pulled into the driveway, the engine coughing once before going silent. The air still buzzed with the energy of the live stream, like the echo of applause clinging to her skin. In the back seat, Isaiah was asleep again, his head slumped to one side, his blanket tangled around his legs. One small hand clutched the strap of his car seat. The other rested loosely against his chest, his fingers curled as if he were holding on to something. Maybe a dream, maybe her voice. Jordan didn't move right away. She just sat there, hands resting on the steering wheel, still trembling. Not from fear, from adrenaline, from disbelief. $5,000. She whispered it out loud like saying it might make it more real. That amount had always been fantasy, something impossible. A full month's rent and then some. A stretch of missed bills. A mound of medical paperwork that said denied in red ink. But now, it was more than a number. It was a door, and it was open. She glanced to her right. Ilias sat in the passenger seat, calm as ever, his jacket folded neatly in his lap. His phone buzzed silently in his palm, but he didn't check it. He looked over at her. "We should go to the hospital." Jordan blinked. "Now?" He nodded. "Tonight." "It's late. He just fell asleep, and I don't have all the paperwork, the authorizations, I've already arranged for the medical trust to be activated," Elias said. "Jessa's team is finalizing the legal structure. The hospital will have confirmation within the hour. If they need more, they'll get it by morning." He turned toward her, eyes steady. "What matters is that we start, that Isaiah is no longer waiting." Jordan stared at him. Her mind tried to catch up, but her heart already understood. This wasn't just charity. This was movement. Immediate, bold, terrifying in its clarity. She reached across the dashboard and opened the glove compartment. Inside was a worn folder, bent at the corners, covered in coffee stains and stress. She pulled it out carefully, flipping through the documents. Test results, insurance denials, the handwritten chemo schedule, her past in ink and rejection letters. "You're serious?" she asked. "I am," Elias said softly. "And we don't have time to waste." She nodded once slowly, then again faster. Her fingers moved without hesitation, reaching back to unbuckle Isaiah. He stirred but didn't wake. She lifted him gently into her arms, his weight familiar and fragile all at once. As she opened the van door and stepped into the night, she looked at Elias one more time. "Let's go," she said. And just like that, hope stopped being an idea. It became a destination. The fluorescent lights of Boston Children's Hospital buzzed overhead as Jordan stepped through the automatic doors, Isaiah resting quietly against her shoulder. The scent of antiseptic hit her like a memory. So many visits, so many fears. But tonight the air didn't feel heavy. It felt like something new. The security guard at the front desk looked up and immediately recognized her. His brows lifted. "Ms. Wells?" he asked. "Dr. Cho said you might be coming in tonight. She's on the 3rd floor. They're ready for you." Jordan nodded, her voice caught somewhere between breath and disbelief. Elias stood beside her, phone still in hand, quietly confirming details with Jess's team. The screen lit up, glowing with a stream of new notifications, messages from the live stream, donation receipts, comments still rolling in from people she would never meet, but somehow already knew. Jordan scrolled slowly, eyes scanning the words. "You're stronger than you know. Praying for Isaiah. Shared this with everyone I know. Keep singing, Mama." That last one made her pause. 3 simple words, but they landed like a hand on her shoulder. She closed her eyes, holding Isaiah's hand a little tighter. Somewhere beyond this room, beyond this hospital, the voice that once echoed from a street corner was reaching farther. Into living rooms, onto screens, through earbuds and timelines and threads of empathy she couldn't see, but could feel. People weren't just watching anymore. They were answering. In another part of the hospital, Elias sat with Jessa and her team, working late into the night to expand the campaign. Plans were already in motion, matching donations, interviews, outreach to advocacy groups. They were coordinating not just help for Isaiah, but a larger message, a call, a song, a reminder that stories like theirs weren't rare. They were just rarely heard. Back in the room, Jordan whispered softly to her son, "You're not invisible anymore, baby. The world is watching now, and they're singing with us." She looked down at him, his tiny fingers curled gently around hers, and smiled. Not everything was fixed. The road ahead would still be steep. There would be surgeries, scans, sleepless nights. But for the first time, they weren't walking it in silence. They weren't walking it alone. They had become a spark, and it had caught. Outside, the city stretched into darkness, but somewhere in that quiet, something had shifted. Something real. Something lasting. A mother's voice had broken through the noise, and it wasn't done singing yet.